Okay, let's dive into something huge. One of the biggest shakeups to India's workforce in, well, over 70 years. We're talking about a complete rewrite of the rulebook that affects how millions of us work, earn, and plan for the future.
So picture this. For decades, if you were a worker or a business in India, you were dealing with this tangled web of 29 different central labor laws. And get this, some of these rules were from the 1930s. I mean, how can a law from the 30s possibly make sense for a world with gig workers and Zoom calls? It just couldn't keep up. But now, all of that complexity is gone. It's been boiled down into just 4 simple codes. The big idea here? To create one clear, modern rulebook that works for everybody, coast to coast.
And as you can see from the Prime Minister's statement, this is being framed as a truly historic move. The ambition is huge, really. To build a workforce that's not just protected today, but is ready for whatever the future throws at it.
So, okay, what does all this actually mean for you, for the average person? Well, that's what we're here to break down. We're going to look at why this was even needed in the first place. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of your salary, see who's getting a wider safety net, explore some brand new rights for workers, and wrap up with the big question: what's next for India?
All right, first up, the historic labor overhaul. So let's get right to it. What was the problem that needed solving here? Why go through such a massive change?
You know, the old system was basically a patchwork quilt of outdated rules. Like, you had colonial-era laws, things written for a completely different time, trying to apply to our modern digital gig economy. It didn't compute. And this created a massive gap, leaving millions of people, especially those in the gig economy, totally unprotected. So the solution? Get rid of that patchwork. Replace it with 4 unified codes that cover the really big areas: wages, social security, industrial relations, and occupational safety. The goal is to finally have one single, clear framework for a modern India.
Okay, let's move on to something that I'm sure is on everyone's mind: your salary. Yeah, this is where things get really interesting, because one of the most talked about changes is the actual math behind your payslip.
So here's the deal. It all comes down to this new 50% basic pay rule. See, for a long time, companies could play around with your salary structure. They'd keep the basic pay part pretty low, maybe 30 or 40%, and then fill the rest with all sorts of allowances. This helped them reduce their contributions to things like your retirement fund. Well, the new system puts a stop to that. It says, nope, your basic pay has to be at least 50% of your total pay. No more wiggle room.
So you're probably asking, okay, why does that matter to me? Well, it matters a lot. Because things like your Provident Fund, or PF, that big retirement nest egg, are calculated directly from your basic pay. So if your basic pay goes up, your contributions to that fund also go up. And that, of course, leads to the one question everybody is asking. Will my take-home pay go down? And the short answer is, yeah, it might, a little. But it's not that simple. Think of it as a forced savings plan. It's less cash in your pocket right now, but it means way more security for you down the road.
Let's break down those long-term gains. Your own contribution to your Provident Fund goes up, sure, but so does your employer's contribution. That's a huge win. Plus, the gratuity you get when you leave a company, that's going to be significantly bigger. All of this adds up to a much more substantial nest egg for your retirement. It's all about playing the long game.
All right, moving on. This next part is, and I'm not exaggerating, a really big deal. We're about to talk about how these new laws are rolling out a social safety net for literally millions of workers who, until now, had absolutely nothing.
Just look at that number. Over 7.7 million people. We're talking about India's massive gig and platform workforce. You know, your food delivery drivers, your Uber drivers, online freelancers. For the very first time, they are being brought into the Social Security framework. This is truly a game changer. So, how's it going to work? Well, the big platforms, think Zomato, Uber, and so on, will now have to chip in. They'll contribute about 1 to 2% of their turnover into a special social security fund. And that fund is what will provide gig workers with crucial benefits like insurance, health coverage, and even old age protection. And look at the projection. This could cover over 2 crore people by 2030.
And this expansion isn't just for gig workers. This table really shows the before and after for everyone. Look at this. A minimum wage is no longer just for some industries. It's a right for all workers. Health insurance coverage is being expanded across the country. And get this, every single worker is now entitled to a formal appointment letter. That's proof of employment, something that just wasn't guaranteed before.
Okay,
So beyond the big safety net, the new codes also bring in some very specific and frankly game-changing new rights for workers. This is all about closing loopholes that have existed for way too long.
And to understand this, we first need to talk about what a fixed-term employee is. Basically, it's anyone hired on a contract for a specific amount of time. You see this all the time in project-based work, like in IT or media. Your job just automatically ends when the contract is up.
Now this is where it gets good for them. Under the old rules, to get your gratuity, which is kind of like a thank you bonus for your service, you had to stick with a company for 5 years. But what if your contract was only for 2 years? You got nothing. That's all changed. Now, fixed-term employees are eligible for gratuity after just 1 year. Plus, they get all the same benefits as permanent workers. That is a massive improvement.
There's also a huge focus on empowering women in the workforce. For example, women can now work night shifts as long as their employer ensures proper safety measures are in place. Gender discrimination is explicitly banned, guaranteeing equal pay for equal work. And, importantly, all job categories are now open to women, including ones that were previously off-limits, like underground mining.
Okay, so we've gone through the details. Let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. What is the grand vision here? What's next for India with these new laws?
It really comes down to a dual goal. On one side, you have stronger protections and social security for workers. That's crystal clear. But on the other side, the goal is to make life easier for businesses. By simplifying compliance, the hope is to boost the ease of doing business and encourage more hiring.
And this all feeds into that larger vision you hear about, building a self-reliant India, or Atmanirbhar Bharat. The idea is to create an economy where everyone benefits, where workers are secure and industries can flourish.
Which really brings us to the final critical question. More protection, more jobs. Is it possible to have both? The big bet here is that stronger worker protections and simpler rules for businesses aren't opposites, but that they can actually work together to create a new wave of employment and growth. Of course, the real proof will be in the pudding, seeing if these reforms on paper truly lead to more and better jobs for people across the country.